I'll show you how to answer any product or growth question using Amplitude Segmentation Report. No code, no SQL needed. We'll look at the 4-step process that you can run in just 5 minutes to unlock more insights from your data. And you will learn how to avoid the 3 most common mistakes that I have come across in over 100 projects. Don't just passively consume this video, you can follow along. So you have 2 options. If you have data in Amplitude already, you can use that data and simply come up with one question that you would like to know about your product. Could be related to acquisition or onboarding or retention or engagement or something else. If you don't have data in your Amplitude account, then you can use the demo data, which I will be using as well. And you can access that by creating your free Amplitude account. There's a link in the video description you can use. You can go to the icon in the top right, organization settings, then you go to projects and you'll see your projects, but you're also gonna see this Amplitude demo link and you can do start exploring and you're gonna jump into demo data, and we're gonna use the e-commerce project for this video. Now, our question for this video is trying to understand how promo codes affect sales and orders. So let's go into the segmentation report here. So we'll open that. In the segmentation report, the first thing we need to do is to choose an event or metric, though for the purposes of this video, we'll stick just to events. So in this e-commerce data set, we do have quite a bit of events, and we will be using a complete purchase event for our analysis. If you're not 100% familiar with the taxonomy of your Amplitude data, one thing you can do is actually go down here and you have the Amplitude AI, and you can simply ask the AI what kind of events could be a good fit. So for example, we can say something like, I'm trying to understand what events could I use. I think this is actually a pretty handy way to use AI. It will go through all your events and it will then give you some options. So we came back and we have a promo code apply event. That seems pretty interesting. And the failure event. Then we have complete purchase. Okay, that makes sense. And we have a few other ones that may or may not be relevant. So let's close this and let's go find the complete purchase event. By the way, once you choose an event, a chart appears on the right side. And this is giving us the purchase data over the last 30 days. We can see down here. First, let's start with this measure as section. So we know we have the event, which is the first section, and the second section is telling us what we're actually seeing. In this case, we see uniques, which is the number of unique users that fired this event over the last 30 days. We can switch this to event totals because for a complete purchase event, a user may make multiple purchases. So the data may change slightly in some cases. We also have an active percentage. This actually is related to active events in your Amplitude data. Again, we won't spend too much time into it, but you can basically label your events as active or inactive. That is, are they important to your active calculation, what you consider an active user? And if so, any event that's being labeled as active will get included here in this active percentage. If not, it'll get excluded. Then we have stuff that's a bit more straightforward. What is the average number of times a user triggered this event? And you see this is about 1.11. What is the frequency of how many times a user triggers this event? And you see the blue is the 1 time, and then how many users is it 2 times or 11 to 20 times? There's some sort of bucket logic going on here. And then we can actually do properties. So a very common property here will be like a sum of a property value. And we can go get a specific property value from the complete purchase event. Remember that the event has multiple properties. And the one that will make the most sense here is actually something like revenue. Let's see if this works. So now what we're seeing here is actually the sum of the revenue on any specific day across the 30 days. You can see that there are more options. You can do a distribution. You can do an average of our property values. For example, what is the average revenue that came in for the complete purchase event, and a few other ones. So lots of different ways to break this apart. And in fact, actually, there's even one more way, which is the formula. And in the formula, you have access to even more stuff. So you actually need to look at some of the specific elements that you may need to build a formula, but you can build even more complex logic here of the one event. We don't need code. We don't need SQL. We can do quite a bit with just the interface. And quite a few of advanced things. In the chart itself, there's a few things that would be helpful to know. We have our date range. So we have some presets that we can do, and we can do very custom things. We can exclude days if we want to. For example, we may want to exclude specific days or any intervals that we don't care about. We can offset. So that means that we can go back and say, we want last 30 days minus 7. This is usually helpful when you're looking at things like trials, where you want to see the number of users who have completed trials, but the trial is 7 days, so you don't want to look at people who are in the middle of trials. Between, since, this, you can see that the time zone for this data is UTC, but you could make it whatever you want, whether that's EST or European time zone or anything else. We then have comparisons, so we can actually compare this data to, let's say, the previous month, and it will then add a second line and show us how this compares across both periods. And this is actually our first mistake and how we can solve it, which is not looking at comparisons. So comparison, you can see how easy it is to add one. And sometimes we just simply don't look enough at what happened in the previous period to understand context. If you imagine an e-commerce site may have a really busy Q4, so if you're looking at data in Q2, it may look very, very low. But once you do some comparisons, you get a sense of what the seasonality is, not just across a year, but perhaps seasonality across a week or a month, or whatever it may be, dependent on your usage frequency. So comparisons are really, really handy. Okay, let's remove that for now. Then this chart is being broken down daily. So we have last 30 days and a daily breakdown. We could go, for example, to a weekly breakdown. And then typically the chart will then change accordingly. If we do just the last 30 days or last 4 weeks, for example, then you only have 4 data points. So in this case, we go to last 12 weeks, but we can change that. We could go to monthly. And again, the chart will change once again. And then we have the type of chart itself. So we have been looking just primarily of a line chart. We do have a bar chart here. We can also have a horizontal bar, stock bar. Some of this only makes sense once you start breaking down the data, which we'll see in the next step. We do have different ways of showing the data itself. And now Amplitude also has chart settings here. And the chart settings actually tell you, for example, that the color theme. So you can put your own color theme for your organization and then use that color theme across all your charts. And there's a few other things like you can sample data, you can do some anomaly and forecast. These are typically enterprise add-ons, so if you have them, you can use them. You can do some annotations if that's relevant to you as well. And that is step 1. This is the foundation. We have the event that we care about, that we want to use for analysis, and we tweak the chart as needed. Maybe the date range, maybe a comparison, maybe the frequency, whether daily, weekly, or monthly, and we are now ready to move on to step 2. Now in step 2, we want to look for hidden segments. Whenever you look at a chart like this, your first reaction here should be, I don't know if I fully trust these numbers. I'm looking at broad numbers across a 30-day period. I want to be able to dive deeper into the specific segments to really understand what is going on. And here's where the magic of Amplitude really becomes apparent. Now we can start to break this event down. The first breakdown we'll do here is at the event level. So we can come here and, for example, we'll look at the event properties and we will break it apart by the promo code. Let's try this. So now our chart is broken apart by the 3 potential promo codes, and there are users who don't use any promo codes. And we can see that we have the 3 lines. They follow the same pattern, the same sort of behavior for the event itself. But we can start to see that like the free shipping promo code is more popular than, for example, the 15% off. Or the refer a friend. And we have lots of breakdowns here. So Amplitude will give you lots of data out of the box around city, country, region, device. You may have some UTM data, for example. Let's look at this UTM source. See what kind of data we have here. So we start to see the breakdown of the chart by different UTM sources, whether Instagram, Google, or Twitter. And when we see a breakdown, some of the other chart types become useful. For example, we could do a bar chart, which kind of makes more sense than the line chart we're looking at. We could go and do a horizontal bar, and then here we can start to see absolute numbers or relative numbers, and things like pie charts also start to make a lot more sense once we have this breakdown. So let's go back to the line chart here. Remember, we're trying to answer the impact of promo codes on sales. What are the most popular promo codes, and do they follow similar behavior? The answer is yes. Something that might be interesting here, though, is what if we do a sum of revenue? Let's try this. We're going to go find revenue here, and then let's break it apart by promo code. So now instead of seeing numbers, now we're seeing the overall revenue, and we can see they actually still follow the same pattern where the 15%, the free shipping is bringing the most revenue compared to refer a friend. It's actually put into a bar chart so we can see it more clearly. So we can see the difference here in revenue across the 3 promo codes. Let's try the average of revenue. And we can see it's actually much closer now, but still, the 15% off is now at the top in terms of the average revenue that I brought in compared to the free shipping by a little bit. There's an adage out there that says that averages lie, but segments don't. So the ability to break down data in Amplitude is what allows you to get closer to reality. Now, we do come across the second mistake here out of 3, which is using too many breakdowns at once. You can see here that I am doing one breakdown, with 2 actually, technically, if we take the average revenue or the sum of revenue, but it's still a somewhat simplistic chart. We still have the promo code, and then we perhaps get a little bit too excited, and we say, you know what, let me also look at UTM source, and let me also look at city in particular. All of a sudden, our chart becomes very chaotic, and it's like, what are we even looking at here? Yes, we have like free shipping, or we have promo code, and then we have a city, and then we have UTM source, and the data just doesn't make a lot of sense. So be mindful as you add breakdowns, because it's kind of fun to keep breaking apart the data, but you want to be able to let the question drive how much granularity you're going after before you get too complex. Now let's look at some of the other breakdowns here so you're aware of what they are. So we did the breakdown by the event level. We can also do segments, and what we create here are effectively user segments. So we may say, for example, we want to look at Twitter users, and we're going to create a segment by finding the same UTM source. And this is the profile properties. And we're going to go find Twitter here. And then we want to compare these users against Instagram. So we'll save that. And now we have some kind of comparison. We can do, in this case, for example, total number of purchases across these 2 segments for both Twitter and Instagram. And in here, as you build a segment, you have lots of options. You can do the properties themselves as we see it. You can do cohorts. You may look at users who perform other events. For example, you may want to see users who did some kind of specific shipping style or specific payment info. You just get a lot more complexity as you build your groups effectively, and you put them all into a single segment. You may have saved segments that other users have created over time. So you have your specific segment of here, like our email users or our power users or our new users. You can just drop them into the chart to break apart the data. The other option here is to do a group segment by a profile property. This group segment by profile property UTM source is identical to this one that we just did here. The difference here is a little bit more nuanced. Sometimes you have profile properties that do not appear here. So you see we have event properties and we have user properties. Like I said, sometimes you don't see all the user profile properties, but you do see them here. So you just get a couple options to do that breakdown. And that is step 2. Now, in just a few minutes, you took your base, you broke it apart, and you start to have some insights. Pretty cool, right? In step 3, we're starting to get ready to share this with other people. So we need to remove the noise. So now that we have our promo code, we may start to say, you know what, we're really just focused on the free shipping promo code in particular. So let me remove it through a filter. So now we apply a filter, and now we only have the free shipping data. So perhaps we keep those segments and whatever else we need. But in this step, you just want to remove anything that's not going to help you make your case in this chart. Sometimes you may have a lot of data. We look at that previous chart where you had 3, 4, 5 breakdowns. So you can do filters to remove anything that's not necessary for the story that you're trying to tell. Put it as a filter, again, either at the event level, you could do it at the segment level if you're using that option. And this gives you a cleaner chart that you can then start to share with the rest of your team. Finally, we have step 4. So we need to convert the chart, the insights, into action. But the first thing you might hear from your team members is, I need a little bit more context here. I need to understand, what am I looking at? So let's say that this is the chart that we want to share. There's a perception that free shipping is the best promo code, but the 50% off is actually bringing higher average of revenue overall, not total revenue. So now we're ready to share this chart. We have a few options. First off, we should give it some kind of title, promo code, average, revenue. And then we have this section here, which is fantastic. We can start to add some context for team members. Which promo codes have a higher average revenue per order right there. And now you can copy the link here. This will copy just the URL of where you're seeing. We haven't saved this chart. Technically, when you create a chart in Amplitude, the link becomes permanent, so you can share it with other people, but it's not the same as saving it. So just note that. Now, if you want to do other kinds of sharing, you'll see that it will ask you to save it. So in this case, as you save it, you then confirm your name, you add it to a space, which are basically like folders in Amplitude. So you may have different spaces, one for your name, for your user specifically, and you may have company-wide spaces. So you can add it to a report, which means this can be a dashboard or a notebook. We won't cover those two in this video, but they're just places where you can save and display your chart. So let's actually save it without adding to any dashboard notebook. And now when we share, we have a few options. We can add people individually to this report. This would mean the report is not necessarily public across your entire Amplitude account, but those individuals who get added will be able to see it. You do have the option to create public links. I don't in this demo account, but that may be an option. You can embed this somewhere, send it to Slack, download a PNG. There's also other options to export down here to a CSV. And in this case, you're going to be exporting the table down here as a CSV. So lots of different ways of taking this data and then sharing it with other individuals. And doing all this helps us avoid the third and final mistake, which is lack of context for team members. Yes, you may have spent 5, 10, 20 minutes really thinking about this chart, but other team members have not. So the more context you can provide, whether in the title, the short description you have here, if you use notebooks, which is basically a document structure where you can drop a chart or multiple charts with text, that's perhaps even better as a way to provide context on the analysis that you're doing. It makes it easier to communicate the story that you're trying to tell with this specific analysis. Now, you came in trying to get an answer for one specific question. We were looking at the impact of promo codes on revenue. We play around with a lot of different settings in the segmentation report that then allow you to get to that specific answer. And now you have your answer. You have your chart, you saved it, or you copy the link, or you export the data, or whatever you decided to do. Don't stop here though. There are plenty of more insights just simply hidden in your Amplitude account that I think will be really cool for you to discover. That's why you should check out the next video that will help you learn even more about how to use Amplitude. My name is Ruben. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.